Thank you very much. I am sure that many people across Guyana are very disappointed with the latest move by APNU to once again abuse the courts of our country. In the latest episode, they went this afternoon to the court to ask the court basically to order that the commission must use Lowenfield's report. And as you are aware, Mr. Lowenfield has produced several reports. And the last report that he produced, which is what APNU wants to be used, is a report that contains Mingo's fraudulent figures. So effectively, they're asking the court to say that a statutory officer advice, which is fabricated, which is false, which has no basis in reality, which is grounded in fraud, Mingo's fraud, that must be used to declare the results of the elections. And that the commission has no power to alter that report or to order him or order anything different. Now, in their filing before the court, they also falsely claim that the Caribbean Court of Justice set aside the recount order. And because the Caribbean Court of Justice set aside the recount order, you have to go back to Mingo's declaration. Now, we're all very clear that this is a falsehood. APNU has a way of misinterpreting, deliberately so, every judgment of the court and anything that comes out in the public domain to suit their narrative. So the Caribbean Court, or the president of the court, could not be any clearer when in his summary of the judgment, which we all listened to, he made it clear that unless an elections court, through a petition, were to invalidate the votes that were counted in the recount process. He mentioned the word votes in the recount process, that no person or authority in Guyana could do so. So he was clear that the votes counted in the recount process could not be invalidated by GECOM nor Lowenfield, only a court through a petition. If you have an opportunity to listen to this again, go back and listen to Justice Saunders saying that. Go online and read the summary of the judgment that he made. It was quite clear what the intention of the CCJ was, and he said it. He endorsed the recount process. Further, Justice Saunders and the judgment gave a detailed recital about the recount order and the transparency that it engendered. It outlined the entire process from the live streaming of votes, the tabulation of the votes, right up to their certification as part of the recount process. It was an endorsement of the recount. But APNU, that did not suit APNU because they failed at the Caribbean Court of Justice. You recall that they ran around the country, they had protests, they disparaged everyone in the world, they took out full-page ads saying that the Caribbean Court of Justice did not have jurisdiction over the matter that the Court of Appeal ruled on. And they had used the Court of Appeal decision conveniently to justify Lowenfield's results. And that was the fraudulent results where he disenfranchised 115,000 persons. They failed on that. First of all, the Caribbean Court of Justice ruled that it had jurisdiction, and secondly, it overturned that ruling and the Court of Appeal decision. And therefore, they had to find another fallback because they lost on that ground. So Lowenfield's report was invalidated by the CCJ too, that as being fraudulent. They said he was engaged in an unlawful exercise. So they then had to say the CCJ throughout the entire recount process, and therefore they had to go back to Mingo's false declaration. Now, this whole country, the entire world, has witnessed the numbers that Mingo produced out of the air, and in the recount, how those numbers were proven fraudulent. They've already been proven fraudulent. So what effectively they're asking the court is to allow the use of fraudulent numbers to declare the results of the elections. That is what effectively, based on, in their view, some technicality. You remember what Ramjatan said? Oh, we can win on a technicality. Well, every court, if you look at the rulings, we've looked at them, the courts ensure that the will of the people is reflected in the result of the elections. And the will of the people was established through a transparent recount that they participated in. They signed on to all of those SORs, the statements of recount, after hiding their SOPs. Lowenfield hid his SOPs, but the statements of recount were tabulated, and this is stretching it. But Lowenfield himself oversaw the recount. He saw that all the parties signed the statements of recount. His staff tabulated those statements of recount. His staff certified them. He prepared a report of the 10 districts in a matrix, and his report showed that the People's Progressive Party won the elections and that you had 460,000 valid voters. That's total number of voters. Incredibly, the same Lowenfield has now produced a report to GECOM to say that 475,000 people voted in the elections, and the valid votes you had. 15,000 votes more than are actually in the box. And that APNU won these elections, and they expect the court in Guyana to say, yes, you can use that report, although it has fraudulent numbers, and it has within the boxes 15,000 votes that are non-existent. You recall they were claiming about bloated lists and dead people voting and how you had to invalidate 250,000 votes. Well, they didn't want to do that in this case. They just are accepting. They've changed to 180 degrees. And now they're saying that the report that they have gone to court for to say that Lowenfield report must stand has within it 15,000 voters who never voted on election day, who never voted. And so this is what they expect the court to endorse: fraud, to endorse electoral fraud. And as I said before, the commission has the authority vested in it by the Constitution of Guyana to ensure fairness and impartiality. The Commission has the constitutional responsibility to see that the will of the people is reflected. If the courts or anyone, what the Commission does, the courts can't direct the Commission as to what they should do, because they're vested with that authority. But basically, if they succeed, then any CEO, now or in the future, can just come up with any number, not following the process as outlined in the Representation of Peoples Act. Because the process says you have to tabulate either all the statements of poll, first of all, every statement of poll in every district to come out with the declaration for that district, that region, and you have to tabulate every statement of poll through a transparent process. That is what the Chief Justice ruled on. People must see the SOPs when you're tabulating. And then, as a result of that, then the CEO tabulates the 10 districts. Now, clearly there was a breach in Region 4 where that process was not followed, and that is why the number was inflated. And that is precisely why the international community and the political parties here in Guyana all objected to it, and they asked for the recount, which Granger agreed to, which there was challenge in the court before the recount. You recall the recount was challenged by Olita Moore, and the recount was not found unconstitutional. In fact, everyone endorsed the recount. We spent probably nearly $1 billion on the recount. Countless man hours. CARICOM came here, endorsed it. And they're saying that falsely now that the CCJ threw that out. So we have to go back to Mingo. Well, as the chair correctly pointed out, once the statements of recount come in, and there were 2,339 of those, they all replaced the statements of poll, and then they were added together. And that is how you came up with the figures that were in Lowenfield's first report, the accurate figure to the commission. So they now want to go back to Mingo's fictitious number, and it's pathetic that Granger would endorse this. He has been denying all along he was party to anything, that he didn't know what was going on, that it's all about GECOM, it's about Mingo. Well, that facade that they painted, the image, the front, the camouflage, has fallen apart now, because Lowenfield coordinates with the 3 APNU commissioners. They go together at meetings at Congress Place, everywhere else. The president seems to be involved now, all with an aim to declare false results for the elections. And so this is the crux of the matter, going to the court, asking the court to endorse Mingo's fraud, because that is what Lowenfield's latest report is based on. Asking the court to direct GECOM, which it has no power to do, that it must comply with a fraudulent report from the chief elections officer. If that were the case, and he has those powers, he'll be the most powerful person in the world, because the chief elections officer will be the most, can determine the fate of any election. Doesn't have to you don't have to have voters or anything else. They can just produce any report out of the blue. But as I said before, the report had to follow a process. The process had to be grounded either in the count or the recount. And in this case, the recount overtook the count. And so his report has to be derived from that. not in replacement of or coming out of his head. That is the crux of the matter. And as for the distortion of the CCJ ruling, I'm sure that would be dealt with adequately. And I'm sure also that if this matter were to end up before the CCJ, that the CCJ would have a lot to say about it too, about the distortion of their ruling, to say that they invalidated the recount when throughout the ruling, the judgment, they basically endorsed, pointed out how transparent the recount was. And as I said before, Justice Saunders speaking about in a summary of the judgment, saying that the votes counted through the recount process cannot be invalidated by any person or authority except through a petition, the Elections Court. That is as clear as daylight. So I know people are extremely disappointed. They are asking me, when will this come to an end? I was at the supermarket a few days back, and some APNU supporters came to me, and they said to me, let's put this to an end, one way or another. Our lives have to go on. We just can't take this anymore. One way or another, let's bring this to an end. They were not saying to me, APNU must win. They were saying, bring this to an end. And the end has to be a lawful end, an end that reflects the will of the people, or else it will not have legitimacy, and it will destroy this country further. The international community has made it clear that they did not support any declaration on the basis of Mingo's numbers, and any president who is sworn in on those results would face consequences. That led to President Granger agreeing to the recount. The recount number came in, endorsed by CARICOM. The entire world endorsed it. And the result, because they're the true results of what took place at these elections, and therefore only those, the international community has made it clear, only those, the declaration on the basis of the recount figures would provide the legitimacy for any government in Guyana. We have made this clear also, that that result is the only result that would be acceptable to us. Now, a number of people have been saying we need to go on the streets, etc. And they will, and they may come a time for that. If APNU persists with these many plots. But now is not the time for this. We cannot put people at risk. And people are at risk when you bring them in gatherings because of COVID-19. We cannot do so at this point in time, but we may very well have to do so. We have been very patient. We have followed the process. We have fought throughout it all to get to a stage where the results, the proper results, are declared. We have a strong international support. I saw the OAS convening a permanent council meeting. If Granger understands history and he understands what that means, then he should think twice about trying to sabotage the declaration of the results of these elections. People are getting serious internationally. They were letting the process run its course. It did through the recount, through the court of CCJ. Everyone thought that this was the end of it. But now they're getting angrier by the moment because this is beyond normal. And it's coming from a tiny rigging cabal that is destroying our country, destroying it. I recall the days when we only had a repetition for two things in Guyana. Jonestown, where over 900 persons were committed mass suicide, facilitated by the PNC, and two, rigged elections by the PNC. Those were the only two things that people knew Guyana about for, and people fled this country en masse. We have, over the years, changed that. We have become known for green economy and much more, and a fledgling democracy. They have taken us back to that dark period. Now we have the repetition of having an election that has not been declared almost 4 months after the elections are held. We have a cabal and a group of people who are intent on stealing the elections, abusing the courts, abusing every other, from corrupt officials, Mingo, Lowenfield, and to using the courts and to using their commissioners to just stymie the process of declaration of the results. We have had to confront all of this. The world is looking on. It's undermining the confidence that they have in our institutions. And now, with the abuse of the court, the worst could happen is to undermine the confidence that foreigners have in our judiciary. Because investors already are saying, if this government remains in office, it doesn't respect the Constitution. It doesn't respect court rulings, even from the highest court, the apex court, which is the Caribbean Court of Justice. It is willing to roll out corrupt officials who shamelessly would present false reports all the time. It hangs on to power at any cost. What will they do if we have a dispute with the government and we're just one investor? If they can defy the whole world to say we're hanging on because they're worried about their corrupt dealings being exposed, then what will they do to the investor? And now the last vestige, if they can seek to abuse the court, then the court, that's where investors often, or anyone who comes to Guyana, or our own people, go to seek justice. Then they will destroy not just the image of our country, which they already been doing, but also the business confidence, investors' confidence, and by extension, the economy of the country. So we have to be very, very concerned that their actions are taking a heavy toll on our country already. This is apart from the fact that there are tens of thousands of people who lost their jobs, who need to go back to work, people who need help because of the COVID situation. They need food, they need help at home. The new government cannot start working on these things because of they're hanging on to power, and because of all these maneuvers to stave off a declaration. We need to swiftly resume development, to focus on development. They talk about power sharing, and everyone says consider it. But I want to ask the same people who are saying consider power sharing. How do you even sit in the same room with some people who are so corrupt and blatantly fraudulent? Look at Lowenfield. This guy has produced every single permutation, several numbers, just out of the blue, all fraudulently so. And he gets the protection of the police. The police should not be there to protect fraudsters. And the commissioner of police has to pay attention to this, and the leadership of the police force. He has more security now than even the president. And to produce fraudulent reports to the commission. There are several private criminal charges that are filed against him. They can't be served, although the police should be assisting the people, the marshals, to serve the summons on him. This is what is taking place. We need to fix all of these things quickly. And about the tensions they talk in the society, they're stoking the tensions. They have a group of people mobilized every day to come around, go before the GECOM. Do you think we can put out numbers on the street? We can put out 50 times the numbers that they have on the street. But we know it's not right, and it should not, it is putting people at risk, and there is another way of solving this. So all of those who are talking about power sharing, we made it clear you have to, before you move forward, you have to do it on the basis of the will of the people being expressed by the president being sworn in, that who won the majority of the vote. And then you can talk about anything else. But how do you actually sit down with people who are so slimy in nature? Have you ever seen that Nagamotu or Ramjatan or many of the others, Trotman disparage people in the small countries of the Caribbean, they're smaller by population, totally disparaging of them. And then says, even the report is wrong, Lowenfield report is fraudulent. The GECOM must accept it as a rubber stamp. The constitutional body, he doesn't have constitutional authority. They must now be subservient to the statutory officer. How could you be so perverse to even suggest that? But he has a lot to hide to, and one understands why. And that is why they're hanging on. So this here, buying another week, I have no doubt that this attempt to rig the elections will fail too. I have no doubt it could very well end up all the way to the CCJ. People are tired. They just want to get this over with. We are too, but we're not giving up the fight. And I know the international community will not do so. And I think they're getting even more resolve to take action against the offenders. And Mr. Granger, rather than worry about what happened in 1973 and all of those periods, focus on here and now. You've lost the elections. You're now endorsing. First, you were claiming you didn't know, and we gave you a free pass. But it seems as though you've come full circle now to endorsing Mingo's fraudulent number, and you misled the entire CARICOM team when you brought them here, that you had no intention of respecting the recount that they certified. So we need to call him out. I know the chair has been very lenient, and because she, I believe, thinks that she's dealing with decent people, that they will do the right thing if given the opportunity to do so. She's given Lowenfield 4 chances. I knew from the first chance that he would not comply. We all knew that. But she's been very lenient, I think, thinking that they will do the decent thing. You're dealing with criminals here who are heavily compromised financially. And therefore, they don't care about our country or its people. And now they're trying to stir up racism, etc. I still maintain, and I will always maintain, that when the PPP was in office, more Afro-Guyanese made progress than under APNU or PNC in the past. In terms of having more jobs, more money in circulation, they were acquiring assets, vehicles, etc. Small businesses grew phenomenally, etc. So we need to return to that. We need to bring a closure to this. But I just want to end here by saying that I know people are disappointed. I know the despondency that has fallen on this country, and not just on PPP supporters. Many APNU supporters too want to get this over with, and so they can resume their lives and livelihoods. And we will be there to the end of it. And thankfully, We have the support of the entire civil society here, decent civil society, all the political parties, and the international community, which has been very, very strong. And I don't think they understand the consequences of what they will face, but unfortunately, the country will face some of those consequences too. And ordinary people will suffer unless we bring a stop to this rigging group. So I want to assure you, we will keep up the fight to the end. We will participate in these court proceedings, but we hope that the chair would swiftly bring an end to this matter too. That she knows if only the recount numbers are to be used, then the chair knows who won the majority in the recount. The PPP, as everyone knows, got over 15,000 votes more than APNU. Considering in the last elections, they won by just over 4,000 votes, more than the PPP. We got 15,000 votes, and the small parties got another 9,000 or so votes. So they lost the elections by over 24,000 votes. All the other parties got over 24,000 votes more than APNU. And yet they continue with their charade. So we'll keep up the fight. Thank you.